Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 18 through 27, page 84 in the Blue Bible. Peter's declaration about Jesus. Once, when Jesus was praying alone, with only the disciples near him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" They answered, "John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others that one of the ancient prophets has arisen." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered, "The Messiah, God." Jesus foretells his death and resurrection. He sternly ordered and commanded them not to tell anyone, saying, "The Son of Man must undergo great suffering, and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised." Then he said to them all, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will save it. What does it profit them if they gain the whole world but lose or forfeit themselves? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words, of them the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. But truly, I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God."
I would also mention that Marge Judge has had to head down to Florida with Tom, but before she went, she contributed to the service by choosing the hymns that we're singing today. She chose hymns appropriate for the day. This month in confirmation class, we've been learning about faith in terms of one of the most important themes in the Bible, loss and resurrection. Kids and adults experience all kinds of losses, ranging from the death of a loved one to the loss of dignity you feel when you are humiliated in public. For everyone, but maybe especially for young people, when you are sad or frightened or embarrassed, it can seem like that feeling will never change. The story of Jesus' resurrection teaches us that sometimes terrible things do happen, but God doesn't let us stay in that place of desperate loss forever. Sometimes the thing you are dreading doesn't actually happen. Sometimes you can learn to look at loss in a new way, or learn how to live in new ways that help you manage it. Often, it is the friendship and love of the other people in our lives that can help us through even the hardest times. We experience these transitions as times of resurrection. As our church moves through a hard time, and as we navigate the depths of a New Hampshire winter, let's hear some stories by confirmation students and mentors about times of loss and resurrection in their lives. The first story is a story I told them to give them the idea. Sometimes when you're young, excruciating embarrassment can feel like the depths of despair. One day, when I was in 6th grade, I went to get my ears pierced. That involved a couple minutes of agony, but afterwards, I was sure that having gold earrings in my ears made me the most fabulous human on the planet. As my mother and I shopped for groceries afterwards, I held my head high, imagining how the other shoppers must be appreciating my glamour and sophistication. As I generously helped my mother unload the shopping cart onto the belt at the register, I thought I could detect appreciative glances from the high school age cashiers. Then, I picked up an extra large jar of ragu spaghetti sauce, and it slipped out of my fingers, smashing to smithereens on the tile floor and sending an eruption of red sauce all over my feet and the shopping cart and that rack of candy and gum and gossip magazines. The burning hot feeling of humiliation flamed up from my stomach to my face, leaving me literally faint from embarrassment as I heard the store's PA system broadcast, "Clean up in aisle 2. Now, when you're 12 years old and something like that happens, it seems unlikely you will ever be able to move on. I could be doing my homework or waiting at the bus stop or lying in bed at night, and the whole horrifying episode would come right back to me as excruciating as the moment it had happened. Many months later, when I was in 7th grade, our English teacher had us all tell vivid stories from our lives. I got up in front of my peers and I related that whole story just as I'm telling you now. I will never know how I had the courage to do it. That may have been the divine part, but I did it. And resurrection came for me when I looked out at that sea of adolescent faces and saw not scorn, but smiles of recognition and affirmation. It was clear from looking at my classmates, they had been there too. And from that moment, we were in it together. From that day on, the thousands of ways I embarrassed myself always held the kernel of potential to one day become a really good story. And Jada has our next story.
My story is the time when I got my concussion. I was at a party and I was pushing a friend on a swing. Her sister called my name. I looked over and she hit me and I fell backwards onto a big rock. I remember going into the house and just kind of leaning on my uncle. I started getting a big bump on my head, so I went to the hospital. I remember not being able to see straight, and when the nurse asked me to pick out a sticker for my hospital bracelet, I couldn't even see them. I remember being kind of nervous that I would never fully recover. I didn't have to stay overnight at the hospital, thankfully, but I had to stay flat for a week. At first I slept most of the time, but as the week went on, I felt great. I wanted to get up and do stuff, but my parents had to keep reminding me to stay low. Now I have fully recovered, but I still have to be extra careful, like wearing a helmet when I go sledding or ice skating, but I'm just glad I fully recovered. Our next story is from Jasmine.
On a Wednesday when I was in 5th grade, I was heading over to junior choir practice so we could get ready for our next performance. My friend's sister came up to tell my sister that she was moving. I didn't really believe her because she's younger than me, so I went into the chapel and found Becca and asked her if she was really moving, and sadly it was a yes. The next thing I remember, I was on my couch crying because it was like I was moving into a new place all over again. I thought I would lose my good friend. I thought of how I would lose my good friend, and I wondered how I would find another friend just as good as she was to me. As the school year went on, I thought about how she would move and my life wouldn't be quite the same without her. Then it came time to do our end of the year concert. One of the songs we sang was Shalom Hallelujah, and it was about saying goodbye to a close friend, which I was about to do. After we sang, summer vacation began and I got to see her almost every day because soon I wouldn't be able to see her quite as often as I did back then. The day before she was about to move, I was getting my bike out of my cubby from downstairs in the basement to ride around with my friend. Becca overheard her parents talking to Mrs. Billy, and when she came out of the church, she had a big smile on her face, and she came over to me screaming that she wasn't moving. I felt so glad that I didn't have to start a new life without her. Now she's at my house every day, and we're like one big happy family. Now, one of our mentors, Dr. Walsh, has a story about when he was a boy.
I think we can all probably recall the situation of having a crush on someone as a young person and your attentions do not seem to be returned. You think about them night and day, dreaming about them at the dinner table and imagining bumping into them when you were at the store with your mother. You find yourself selecting your clothes in the morning just for them. You linger in places where they might pass by and then throw yourself into efforts which you hope will win them, with attempts to attract their attention, trying to mold yourself to be just like what they would like, maybe ignoring them in a studied way, and befriending their friends to make yourself more appealing. You picture yourself heroically saving them and their family, or maybe their dog, from a burning building, and thereby earn their eternal love and admiration. Sadly, despite all of this, the reality appears. That person is simply not interested in you. It is horribly crushing and shaming, with you feeling worthless and unlovable, and it is difficult to imagine life without this person who surely would have brought you paradise. You are embarrassed to see them at school and feel foolish. Your voice stammers in class, and you turn crimson at the mere sight of them, or at something which seems so grave at the time, such as tripping on the stairs or spilling some of your lunch on your shirt. Life can seem almost pointless in that situation, and there appears little to live for. It seems that the joy of activities and friends whom you once enjoyed, and the pleasure you had looking forward to things have evaporated and will never return. Is there redemption from all of this? Yes. Although it might take a long time, even many years, you eventually realize that the person you longed for would not have been a good match anyway. You also find that you yourself have changed, and that what was so appealing in that person may not be important anymore. Further, you find that the joy in life did return, and you went on to have many happy times. At that time, you could look back and remember the pain of it all, which was very real, but your life has been a good one anyway, and you have found others to love and who love you. Next, Jada will read Kelsey's story.
This is Kelsey's story. The day started out great. First, we got snacks for a movie we would see later on. Once we got home, my mom and dad went to their room. My sister and I heard them arguing, so we turned up the TV. After a while, my dad came out looking sad. I knew it was bad if my dad looked like that. He told us that they were splitting up. I was devastated. He told us when he was moving out. Then we went out for Chinese food to our favorite restaurant. When moving day came, we had a lot of help. That was our first time seeing the house. After that, we had to wait until we could go to his house. It was really sad to me, but now everything is a little better. Our next story is from Grace.
My grandpa lives in Florida and was riding his motorcycle with his friends. It was bike week and they were driving on the highway when he had a bad accident. He flew over the handlebars and landed on the road. They had to call a helicopter to fly him to the hospital. While all this was happening, we were at home. It was terrible when one of his friends called us to tell us he was in such a bad accident. My parents had to catch the next flight down to Florida to see him while my brothers and I stayed home. It was scary to stay home while my parents were down there. We were so worried about him. A couple weeks later, after my parents got back, we all went down to see him. It was so good to be able to see him and know that he was doing much better. I'm really glad he lived through that accident and is doing better now.
It can be hard to believe that things will get better when you are right in the middle of a hard time. Paul said, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith means knowing that even when the worst thing happens, there will come a time of resurrection. Often that resurrection comes from the people in your home, your work, and your church who will help you through.